Halala, Halala, my Kwababa family, welcome back to another review, and honestly, today I am coming to you with so much joy in my heart because finally, after everything this family has been through, we are getting the moment we have all been waiting for. Bahumi has received her Lobola. Yes, you heard me right. The negotiations are officially done, the cattle have been counted, the families have spoken, and Bahumi is now, for all intents and purposes, a Makoti in the making. But before we get carried away with the celebration, because trust me, there is a lot to celebrate today, let's slow down and unpack everything that happened in this episode, because as usual, Kwababa did not come to play. There were tears, there was tension, there was a little bit of comic relief, and underneath all of it, the writers made sure to remind us that even in the middle of a joyful Lobola celebration, this family is still sitting on secrets that are going to explode the moment somebody stops holding their breath. So let's start from the top. The episode opens with the two families finally in the same yard, and you can feel the atmosphere is different this time. Unlike the last few episodes where the negotiations kept stalling because of pride, because of old grudges, and because certain people in this family simply cannot let go of control, today everybody seems to have decided, for once, to put Bahumi and Zweliki first. And honestly, it was refreshing to watch. We have seen so much back and forth with these negotiations, so much posturing, so much who is going to lead the delegation, so much who represents the family, that by the time the actual Lobola talks began, I was half expecting another walkout. But no. This time, cooler heads prevailed, and the elders on both sides sat down and handled business like the mature adults we always hoped they would be. Now, let's talk about the negotiating team, because this is where the episode really starts to get interesting. If you've been following the show, you'll remember there was a whole storyline about who should be leading the negotiations on Zweliki's side. There was a real tug of war between Amniba and the more traditional route that some of the family wanted to take. Amniba has really grown into this role over the past few episodes, and today, watching him step up and represent the family with such calm authority, I actually found myself proud of his character development. This is a man who, not too long ago, was underestimated by almost everyone around him, including some of his own relatives who felt he wasn't family enough to be trusted with something as important as Lobola negotiations. But today he silenced a lot of doubters. He spoke with confidence, he understood the customs, and he handled the back and forth with the uncles on the other side like someone who has done this 100 times before. Of course, we cannot talk about Amniba's rise without talking about the person who has been quietly, and sometimes not so quietly, resenting his growing influence in the family. I am, of course, talking about Kwab. If there is one character this season who has been an absolute rollercoaster to watch, it is Kwab. On one hand, I understand where he's coming from. He genuinely believes that family business, and by extension family matters like Lobola negotiations, should stay within the bloodline. There is a scene earlier in the episode where he pulls one of the elders aside and basically says that it doesn't sit right with him that someone who isn't technically blood is now the face of such an important cultural process. And look, as much as I want to be annoyed at Kwab for constantly trying to create friction, I have to admit, he does have a point buried somewhere in all that pride. It's a fair question to ask, why would you hand over something so significant to someone outside the family when there are actual family members who could take up that responsibility? But then again, the way Kwab goes about expressing this frustration is exactly why nobody in that family takes him seriously anymore. Instead of having an honest, calm conversation with the people involved, he goes behind their backs, he mutters under his breath, he tries to recruit allies to undermine Amniba quietly instead of confronting the situation directly. And that, for me, is the tragedy of Kwab's character. He could be a voice of reason in this family if only he learned how to communicate like an adult instead of scheming in corners. Now let's shift to the heart of today's episode, which is obviously the Lobola negotiation itself. Watching the two delegations sit across from each other, exchanging the customary greetings, going through the formalities of introducing the Makoti's price, was such a beautifully shot sequence. The show's production team really outdid themselves with the setting today. You could see the traditional attire, the beadwork, the careful choreography of the elders standing up, sitting down, negotiating in that call and response style that is so deeply rooted in our culture. It reminded me why I fell in love with Kwababa in the first place. Yes, the drama and the secrets are what keep us hooked, but moments like this, moments that center our traditions and show them with such respect and detail, are what make this show feel like more than just entertainment. It feels like a celebration of who we are. Bahumi, for her part, spent most of the episode inside the house with the other woman, and I have to say, her reactions throughout the negotiation were priceless. Every time there was a raised voice outside, every time the men seemed to be taking too long to agree on a number, you could see the anxiety creeping into her face. There's a particularly touching moment where one of her aunts pulls her aside and reminds her that no matter how long the men take outside, this day belongs to her, and that she should trust that Zweliki's love for her is not going to be shaken by a few hours of negotiation. It was a small moment, but it carried so much weight, especially considering everything Bahumi has been through this season with her own family drama. And speaking of Zweliki, let's talk about him for a moment, because his storyline this episode was honestly bittersweet. Here is a man who is on the happiest day of his life, finally receiving the blessing to marry the woman he loves, and yet there is this dark cloud hanging over him that the audience knows about but he doesn't. I am talking, of course, about the ongoing mystery surrounding his paternity. If you've been keeping up with the show, you'll know that there have been whispers for weeks now that the man Zweliki has always called his father might not actually be his biological father. And what makes this episode so painful to watch, in the best way possible, is that Zweliki is out there celebrating, laughing with his uncles, accepting congratulations from people in the yard, completely unaware that the woman who holds the answer to this secret, Moazi, is sitting quietly in the corner of that same yard, carrying the weight of a truth she has refused to speak for years. Moazi's storyline in this episode deserves its own conversation, honestly. The way she has been written this season, as this guarded, almost haunted woman who clearly knows more than she lets on, has been one of the most compelling parts of Kwababa for me. In today's episode, there's this incredibly tense scene where Moazi is sitting with the other woman, supposedly celebrating, but her eyes keep drifting towards Zweliki every time his name is mentioned. At one point, one of the aunties jokingly says something about how proud Zweliki's father would be to see his son getting married, and the camera lingers on Moazi's face just long enough for us to see her flinch. It's such subtle acting, but it speaks volumes. She knows something. She has always known something. And the longer this show drags out the reveal, the more I find myself both frustrated and completely invested, because I need to know what happened in her past that connects her so deeply to this family's bigger secret. There's also this recurring tension between Moazi and Kwab that the show keeps hinting at without fully explaining, and today's episode added another layer to that mystery. There's a brief exchange between the two of them where Kwab seems to be pressuring her about something, and Moazi shuts him down almost too quickly, too defensively, for it to be an innocent conversation. If I had to guess, and this is purely speculation on my part, I think Kwab knows more about Moazi's secret than he's letting on, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's been using that knowledge to manipulate her, or at the very least, to keep her compliant while he schemes about the family business behind the scenes. The writers have been dropping breadcrumbs about a connection between Kwab and Moazi's past for a while now, and I have a feeling that whatever comes out is going to shake this family to its core, possibly even more than the Lobola drama we've been following all season. Let's also touch on Amla's personal life for a second, because his storyline outside of the negotiations has honestly been one of the more grounded, feel-good arcs this season. We've watched him struggle to find stable work for what felt like forever, and it was so satisfying to see him finally land that logistics contract a few episodes back. Today, there's a lovely little scene where his wife brings him lunch while he's helping set up chairs for the negotiation, and they share this quiet, tender moment away from all the family chaos. It's a nice reminder that not everything in Kwababa has to be doom and gloom. Sometimes the show lets its characters just be happy, even if only for a scene or two, before the drama picks back up again. And I think that contrast is actually really well done, because it shows us what Kwab could have if he just let go of his need to control everything. Amla isn't trying to inherit anyone's business or prove a point to the family. He's just trying to build a life with the people he loves, and honestly, that quiet contentment is more admirable than any title or inheritance Kwab is chasing. Now, back to the negotiations, because there's a moment in the middle of the episode that had my jaw on the floor. Just when it seems like the two families are about to reach an agreement on the final amount, one of the uncles from Bahumi's side raises an objection, questioning why Amniba is the one speaking on behalf of the groom's family instead of someone from the actual bloodline. This, of course, plays right into Kwab's hands, and for a moment, you can see the smug satisfaction on his face, like he's been waiting for someone else to say what he's been thinking all along. The negotiation nearly grinds to a halt right there, and honestly, my heart was in my throat because after everything Bahumi and Zweliki have been through, the last thing anyone wanted was another delay. But this is where the episode really shines, because instead of Zweliki's family caving to the pressure, one of the older aunties stands up and delivers this powerful speech about how family isn't just about blood, it's about who shows up, who does the work, who carries the responsibility when it matters most. She reminds everyone present that Amla has been there for this family through thick and thin, long before some of the people questioning his place ever lifted a finger to help. It was such a mic drop moment, and I actually clapped at my screen when she sat back down. The objection dies down after that, and the negotiations continue, but you can tell Kwab is not happy about how that exchange played out. Eventually, after what feels like hours of back and forth, counting, recounting, and the usual playful haggling that makes these negotiation scenes so entertaining to watch, the families finally reach an agreement. And when the elder from Bahumi's side finally stands up and announces that the Lobola has been accepted, the yard erupts. I mean it, the ululating, the singing, the dancing, it was everything. Bahumi comes running out of the house the moment she hears the celebration start, and the look on her face when she locks eyes with Zweliki across that yard, that is the kind of moment this show does so well. All the tension, all the family drama, all the underlying secrets, for just a few minutes, none of it matters, because these two people finally get their moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. Of course, being Kwababa, the celebration doesn't last without at least one more layer of drama being teased before the credits roll. As the party is in full swing, there's a quieter scene tucked away from the main festivities where Moazi excuses herself and steps outside, presumably to get some air. But instead of just breathing and calming down, she pulls out her phone and makes a call to someone we don't get to see, saying only that he needs to know, before it's too late. Now, who is he, and what does he need to know? Is this about Zweliki's real father? Is Moazi finally about to break her silence after all these episodes of hinting and dodging? Or is this about something else entirely, something we haven't even considered yet? The scene cuts away right there, leaving us with nothing but that ominous line hanging in the air while the celebration continues obliviously in the background. Honestly, that is such a classic Kwababa move, giving us a beautiful, heartwarming resolution to one storyline while simultaneously planting the seed for the next explosive reveal. I also want to touch on the smaller character moments that made this episode feel so full, even with all the major plot movement happening. There's a really sweet, almost comedic subplot involving some of the younger cousins trying to sneak extra helpings of the celebration food before the official proceedings are even done, and getting caught by one of the grandmothers, who chases them around with a wooden spoon. It's a small thing, but it added such a nice, light-hearted texture to the episode, reminding us that even in the middle of high-stakes family drama, everyday family life continues around it. There's also a brief but meaningful exchange between two of the aunties gossiping about who's going to be responsible for planning the actual wedding now that the Lobola has been settled, and one of them jokingly says that if Kwab tries to insert himself into the wedding planning the way he tried to insert himself into the negotiations, there's going to be another fight before the big day even arrives. It got a genuine laugh out of me, but it also subtly foreshadows that Kwab's storyline is far from over, and that his need for control isn't going to just disappear because the Lobola negotiations are behind them. Something else worth mentioning is how the show handled the visual storytelling in this episode. The color grading during the negotiation scenes was noticeably warmer, almost golden, which really emphasized the sense of tradition and celebration. But then during Moazi's scenes, the lighting shifts to something much cooler, almost blue-toned, which visually reinforces just how isolated and burdened she feels even while surrounded by joy. It's a small technical detail, but it's the kind of thing that shows the production team is paying attention to more than just the dialogue. They're using the camera and the lighting to tell us things the characters themselves aren't saying out loud, and I really appreciate that level of craft in a show like this. Now let's talk a little bit about where this leaves us going into the next few episodes, because there is clearly a lot still left to unpack. First and foremost, the wedding itself is now on the horizon, and if the Lobola negotiations were this dramatic, I genuinely cannot imagine what the actual wedding day is going to look like, with Kwab still simmering in the background, Moazi holding onto a secret that could change everything, and the ever-present tension around the family business that Kwab still believes should be his by right. There's also the looming question of what Moazi's phone call means, and who exactly she's planning to tell the truth to. If it's Zweliki himself, that could completely derail the wedding preparations, especially if the truth about his paternity turns out to be as complicated as the show has been hinting. And if it's someone else entirely, that opens up a whole new can of worms that I don't think any of us are prepared for. I also want to make a prediction here, purely based on how the show has been building things up. I have a strong feeling that Kwab's resentment toward Amniba is not going to stay quiet for much longer, and that we're going to see him try to sabotage something related to the wedding, possibly using whatever information he might have on Moazi as leverage. It would fit perfectly with his character arc so far, a man who cannot win through honest effort, so instead he tries to manipulate the people around him into giving him what he believes he deserves. Whether that plan succeeds or blows up in his face, and honestly with Kwab it's usually the latter, remains to be seen, but I have a feeling the next few episodes are going to be an absolute rollercoaster. Before I wrap up this review, I do want to give credit where